Introducing Royal Caribbean's newest ship, Icon of the Seas, the ultimate family vacation. The ultimate 6 slides, 8 neighborhoods, 0 compromise vacation. The ultimate never done that, can't wait to do it vacation. The ultimate chillin' by a different pool every day of the week vacation. This is the Icon of Vacations. Icon of the Seas, arriving in 2024. Book today. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
This episode is brought to you by Pepsi Wild Cherry. Pepsi Wild Cherry is bursting with delicious cherry flavor and a sweet, crisp taste that gives you more to go wild for. Getting wild may look different these days, but whether it's opting for a solo Friday binge watch or a big night out, everyone can indulge in their wild side with Pepsi Wild Cherry. Also available in 0 sugar. So grab a Pepsi Wild Cherry and get wild.
Hi there, Duke fans. It's episode 572 of the DBR, the Duke Basketball Roundup podcast. I'm Jason Evans. I'm here for your listening enjoyment because the Blue Devils have defeated the Baylor Bears, a very, very big win for Duke. And joining me, as always, my partner in crime, who is at the game, Donald Wine. How's it going, Donald?
Oh, it was great. I'm doing great. I also am at the next big Duke thing, which is the Birmingham Bowl. I'm down here in Birmingham, Alabama. I flew down this morning, just got in a few hours ago, already had my barbecue. As some people know, my mom grew up in this area, so it's a bit of a homecoming for me, and I'm going to go out to her hometown tomorrow and visit my aunt and cousins. So that's been cool. But man, Jason, I'm sorry you were not at this game last night, because this game last night was just an awesome game. In my mind, the best complete team performance that we've seen this year from our Duke Blue Devils, but also just the atmosphere was incredible. It was so great to be a part of it.
Yeah, so let's do that first before we get to the game. And by the way, an apology to everybody. You're probably getting this podcast kind of late, considering the game was last night. We're recording, it's about 4:00 in the afternoon, East Coast time on Thursday. I know the game was on Wednesday, and usually we would get this to you a little bit sooner. Donald had to travel to Birmingham.
I get here. So
yeah, I had some stuff going on in the early afternoon, being a journalist and a film critic at my other life when I'm not doing Duke podcasts. So we've both been busy, but we just finally hopped on. I apologize if we didn't have instant reaction to the Baylor game. But Donald, before we get to the headlines, the good, the bad, and all that other stuff, let's go ahead and get from you a little perspective on what happened in the stands, who you met, all that kind of good stuff from being at the game.
So this was the second time we had played Baylor. The first time, obviously, being the 2010 Elite Eight, which was in Houston, which was a home game for Baylor fans, really, at that point. This was the complete opposite. This was an Elite Eight atmosphere, but it was one where Duke was filling up the Garden. I went with my cousin last night. Shout out my cousin Alexis, who came with me to the game. We had some great seats, but I turned to her and I said, Duke could play against the post office in the Garden and we would fill it, because there was just Duke fans everywhere. Baylor had their section, but it was maybe 85-15 Duke fans, which was a lot of fun. I will say, Jason, there was a ton of people that listened to the show or have been a part of the show that I was able to see. First off, shout out Sam Klein. Sam was in the building. We got to meet up before the game and after the game to celebrate a little bit. We met up with the K-Man, David Kerman. Shout out to K-Man and his son Jason, who rode through. Jason, I think you got a picture of the three of us.
I did. He took a photo
game
of you and him and Sam. Very nice shot. Very nice picture.
Yeah, it was really cool it's one of those things where you talk to a guy over the internet for a long time and you don't actually meet him. It was great to finally meet K-Man and spend some time with him and talk with him before the game. And I'm sure he and his son were able to enjoy the game. Wes Tullison saw, I guess through Twitter, knew that I was coming and asked where I was. And I told him, and he came at halftime to quickly, shake hands and introduce himself. So Wes, thanks for coming down to find me in the seats. And it was great meeting you. Michael Marriott, native on the DBR forums, a fellow headline monitor of ours, Jason. He was at the game, saw him, our buddy Dan Nolan, and Gina and Lance McCain were at the game. They were they were behind the Duke bench, so it was hard for me to get from my seat to theirs.
Yeah, Gina McCain texted Donald me with what the seats she'd be sitting in, and I noticed. I was like, "Oh, Donald, she got better seats than you."
It was very close because it was funny. My seats were 6 rows off the floor. I don't know how I got these. Thanks, Duke, for doing that. B and I are Duke people. Sometimes you get good seats. But I mean, Jace McCain, Jared's brother, was maybe 5 rows in front of us. Like we could walk down and high five the team. That's how close we were. It was a super good seats. But it made for a great atmosphere. I think there were so many Duke fans who were excited about this. We talked about this being a big game for Duke, and it felt like that in the building. And everyone responded in kind. This was a Cameron type atmosphere. This, like I said, an Elite Eight type atmosphere. This was a lot of fun to be at, and everyone was involved the whole game. And there was points where at the end, Jason, when we started chanting "Our House," that shook the building. It was loud. It was demonstrative. And for the record that we have in Madison Square Garden, I think this is the 8th straight time we've won at the Garden in a game. It's become our house. It's become our home away from home, and it felt like it last night.
Yeah, there's a reason it's called Cameron North.
Exactly.
Yeah. Everyone gets that. And so let's move to the headlines really quick. And just because you mentioned the McCain family, I wanted to mention that there were a whole bunch, like a half dozen or so folks who emailed us at dbrpodcast@gmail.com to say that Jared McCain had a big game right after we had his mom and dad on the podcast. And they said, "Oh, it is clear that there is a DBR podcast effect." Matt Newell Ching referred to it as the DBR bounce. I love that.
I'll take it.
So when parents appear on the Duke Basketball Roundup, their child plays well the next game. That is why I want to announce right now that we've lined up interviews with the Mitchells, Filipowskis, Proctors, and Roach families for the first 4 weeks of March. And we'll be talking to Mama and Papa Shire the first weekend of April. I'm kidding, of course. By the way, we'd love to get them. We'd love to get all of them. But it was just really amusing. I thought that so many people listened to and enjoyed our interview with Gina and Lance McCain, and then connected that to Jared McCain having a big game right after we chatted with his parents. By the way, if you're one of the folks out there who maybe you've been busy for the holidays or whatever, you didn't get around to listening to the last episode when we spoke to Gina and Lance McCain, go back and listen. It is a great interview, not because we are great, but because they were very honest and revealing to us. And again, just can't thank them enough, and thrilled that their son played so great in the wake of his parents making a big press appearance on the DBR podcast.
Look, we will take whatever bounce we can get. If this is the recipe, then I'm ready to start cooking, Jason, every day.
I love it. All right, I'm gonna get to the headlines first. This is what we always do. These are the many, many folks who wrote to us, the DBR podcast at gmail.com in inbox. Paul Downing checks in. Paul says, "Not so young anymore. Rifle Roach roast Bears." So he gave us sort of 2 headlines there, a play on the outstanding play of Ryan Young, and Jeremy Roach gave us a little alliteration. Rifle Roach. I like that. Jared Strauss, a longtime emailer, says, "Duke starts hot, gets cold, finishes just right against the Bears." Little Goldilocks.
I love that one.
I like that. We had another Goldilocks. Eric Bishop did something very similar. He said, "Hot, cold, and just right. Bears subdued by Blue Devils in a tale of 3 games." And part of the story of this game is very much that Duke started out great. Baylor fought back, took the lead, and then Duke finished just right. A really strong, play by the Blue Devils down the stretch. Jim Baumgardner gave us "Young is the Bear at Cameron Square," an allusion to Cameron North. I like that. Madison Square Gardens is now Cameron Square. I thought that was clever. Ken Swanner, Duke DeClaws Bears. Duke's D was a major story in this game, and that is what Ken is referring to there. Eric Overton gave us this headline: "Forever Young. Ryan Sparks' late Duke run." We're going to be talking about Ryan Young. before we can be talking about Ryan Young.
Uh-huh.
And John Hodge, this is the last one I picked out. And, for the 20 or 30 of you who sent us headlines and didn't make it, keep trying. Keep trying. These are the ones that made the cut. John Hodge, Madison Square Magic. Duke's dynamic display. I like that, John. Madison Square Magic is very clever and sums up what happened last night in the Garden. Donald, let's start with the good. What do you want to go to first? Pick it out, man.
You know what? There's a lot that we can talk about in this game. I want to start with the end because you mentioned, a lot of people mentioned the just right finish for the Blue Devils. And Duke men's basketball, their Twitter put out a stat last night after the game. In 2010 against Baylor, with 3:36 to go in that game, it was 61-61. And then Duke went on an 11-1 run. Last night, with 6:30 to go, the score, Jason, 61-61. And wouldn't you know it, Duke went on an 11-1 run after that and never looked back. It was, the Mecca, we call the Garden the Mecca. It's the Mecca of basketball for a lot of people. And everyone wants to play well in the Garden. Everyone. It is no secret that some of the stars shine bright on that stage in the Garden. And last night, I think Jared McCain stepped up when the chips were down. He was magnificent all game. Jeremy Roach. This Jeremy Roach that we have seen so far this year, Jason, and last night especially, is the Jeremy Roach that I would love to see for the rest of the time, because that Jeremy Roach did not buckle under the pressure. He stepped up, and whenever we needed something, he was able to provide it, whether it be getting to the line and making free throws. That, one of the plays of the game, it's not the play of the game, but right in the minute left where he just said, I'm going to take on the whole team and end this game right now. Any notion that they're going to come back is going to be forever foiled, because I'm driving all the way to the hoop and laying it in off of three guys. He had some magnificent moments. And Jeremy Kane also, when the lights were brightest, he stepped up in big ways. And we had a lot of guys who had some magnificent moments, magical moments, as one reader put it, in this game. And I think being able to do that at Madison Square Garden is no easy task. And I'm glad that they were able to do that against a really tough Baylor team who played. I didn't think Baylor played, super terrible. I thought we
not at all
did very good, but they were scrappy. This was from a neutral's perspective, this was a really good game to watch. And I think the great thing is both teams played well, but when it came down to it, again, 11-1 run, that sealed it for us.
So you mentioned a couple things I want to follow up on what you're talking about there. First of all, Jeremy Roach. In his past 6 games, he's scored 18, 19, 18, 20, 22, and 18 points. That's pretty much right on an average of 19 points per game. It's not bad. I mean, we sometimes talk about March Roach or playoff Roach, whatever you want to call him, postseason Jeremy Roach, that has lifted this Duke team in the past, especially in Jeremy Roach's sophomore season. He's pretty much playoff Roach all the time now. And by the way, in those past 6 games, he's 12 for 20 on 3-pointers. That's ridiculous. Those are crazy numbers. Dude is just shooting lights out. He is gathering assists. He is making everyone on the floor better. That is what you want from your senior leader. I think he has been absolutely outstanding. And it is worth noting that this Duke team has struggled in tight games. The Arizona, Arkansas, Georgia Tech games were all very, very winnable contests. Duke had leads in the final 5 minutes of all 3 of those games, I think. Maybe not Arkansas, but Arizona and Georgia Tech, absolutely. Duke had leads. In fact, there were moments that you thought, we're going to win this game. And it went away. And for us to play a team the quality of Baylor, who is no question about it, they are a Final Four contender. They're that good this year. For us to play a team like Baylor, for it to be tied at 61, and for us to pull away the way we did, is an impressive sign of maturity from this team. And if we're going to talk about tied at 61 and this team pulling away, we're going to talk about Ryan Young. That's going to happen right now, Donald, because Kyle Filipowski went to the bench with 4 fouls. It was tied 61. Kyle Filipowski goes to the bench with 4 fouls. And let's be honest, as great as Jeremy Roach has been, Kyle Filipowski is Duke's best player. Period. End of story. Flip goes to the bench, 6.5 minutes left in the game. And you're like, okay, how long, we can try and buy a minute, maybe 2 minutes here with him. What are we going to try and do? And Ryan Young came in and probably had the best 3 minutes of his Duke career. I'm not 100% certain. I'd have to go back and look at a lot of other games and stuff like that last year, but it's up there. It's probably the most important 3 minutes of his Duke career. He scored, he screened, he rebounded like a beast, and then he had that pass to Jared McCain for a wide open three, which I'll go ahead and say it right now. Play of the game.
Play the game.
Yeah. That was my play of the game.
Signed by everybody. Yeah.
We don't have to discuss it. That's the play of the game. That was the moment. That was the play where Duke won this ball game. And for a guy like Ryan Young, who leads with his voice most of the time, to come on the floor in a tie game in the final 5 minutes and lead with his actions, it's just a really, really big deal. And it's worth noting that the layup, the points that Ryan Young scored on that pass from Jeremy Roach with about 5.5 minutes left, were points number 999 and 1,000 of Ryan Young's career. Now, most of those points were scored at Northwestern, but what a nice moment. I mean, like, to reach 1,000 points scored in your career on a night when you have probably your best game in a Duke uniform, really, really nice, wonderful moment for him. And I'm going to tell you something, Donald. There is someone who had really good seats right behind the Duke bench who sent me a photograph that he took on his phone. I'm not going to name who the person is. We're just not going to get into that. But it's a photo of the game being over, and Ryan Young and Kyle Filipowski are walking right next to each other, and Flip has his arm like all the way wrapped around Ryan's neck, like, almost got him, almost in a headlock kind of thing, but not in a way that's at all threatening. It is a way to say, thanks for picking me up, buddy. You did me a solid. I couldn't do it, and you did it for me instead. It's a great photo, and it's a great capturing of that moment. And look, these are the two guys. I'm sure they battle against each other in practice every single day. And I'm sure it is no fun going against Kyle Filipowski if you're Ryan Young. The book on Ryan Young is that if you're playing a team that's got really good athletes in the post, that he's going to struggle. You don't get better athletes than what Baylor had in there. Baylor is all athletes. And Ryan Young, not only did he not struggle, I mean, you can make a really solid argument that he won the game for the Blue Devils.
Jason, it's not lost on me that in Madison Square Garden, I know we talk about being the mecca of basketball, but it is also the home of the New York Rangers. It is not lost on me that last night Ryan Young put out two of the best hockey shifts any basketball player can ever do, because those were hockey shifts. He came, like you said, he came, he did rebound. He came, he had defense. He provided some scoring. He provided some passing. He provided, just that uplift. The two biggest cheers of the night of players came from him checking out of the game and everyone in the building applauding the effort that he put forth on the basketball court during those 3-minute stretches that he was kind of in the game. And it felt like he embraced the moment. Like, again, it's Madison Square Garden. Everyone wants to play well. But this game, as you mentioned, Jason, was not set up for him to play well because, again, he was going against some really athletic guys. And he was able to figure out a way to beat them at their own game. It's not like he was more athletic than these guys, but he figured out a way to kind of put their athleticism at bay. And on defense, he had a couple where, Missy went straight up at him and kind of backed him down, and everyone in the building was like, okay, well, these are going to be 2 points. We figure out how to get them back on the offensive end. And he threw some look at him that made Missy miss. And when he came down with the rebound, he came down with force. He went up, and it was one of those things where he went up and grabbed it. And there was no doubt in my mind that of everyone in the gym, Ryan Young was coming down with the basketball. And that is an athletic move, right? Like, Zion Williamson, whenever he jumps, it doesn't matter if you had position over him, whatever. Zion Williamson was just going to get the rebound. Ryan Young in that moment was like, hey, I'm going to get this rebound. I don't care what I have to do to get it, but this ball is mine. And the fact that he was able to do that, and it's not like he had a bunch of rebounds, right? He had 2, but those 2 were so important at the time because it ended any momentum that Baylor had. And again, he also turned it into offense on the other end. The fact that he was plus or minus, he was +2, doesn't speak to what Ryan Young did on that basketball floor last night to save Duke and really also help us in that, again, that 11-1 stretch where we put the game out of reach. That was in no small part due to the energy and the effort that Ryan Young put forth on the basketball court. Again, two of the greatest hockey shifts I've seen a basketball player do. And I'm glad he did it last night at the Garden, because he deserves every kudos he gets because of that.
So we've been talking about the end of the game. I want to go back to the beginning, because my next thing I have in the good is the way this Duke started this game. This is a Duke team that in many, many contests this season has come out of the box a little flat. We have not been the best team. We have not been the best team. Flat. Yeah. Best team coming out of the box. Well, not the case tonight. And to me, it was really the defensive end of the floor where we really showed it. Look, the opening play of the game, they try and throw a lob. They try and catch Duke napping on the very first play, and Kyle Filipowski got a steal instead. And it showed real awareness to me of what Baylor was trying to do, and that this Duke team was prepared to battle them. In the first 5 or so minutes, it felt like everything Baylor was attempting on offense was just super hard for them. Like they were working their butts off to get really bad shots. And that is a sign of how much effort a team is putting in on defense. And at the other end of the floor, in the opening 5 minutes, when Duke was on offense, Caleb Foster and Jared McCain were just taking the ball to the hoop. They were being really aggressive. And, despite these Baylor guys who are great shot blockers and who have, they're long and athletic in the post, our little guards are like, I don't care. I'm just going in there, man. I'm taking it to the hoop. I'm going to turn the corner. I'm going to get in the lane, and I'm going to get myself an easy shot. You know how frustrating it is if you're a team and you're working your butt off to get a bad shot at one end of the floor, and on the other end, they're shooting layups? That'll break you. So, by the way, hat tip to Baylor for coming back from that. But a big hat tip to Duke for the first 5 minutes and how well they played at the beginning.
I'm glad you mentioned that it was the defense, because I fully think that in this game, for most of the game, the defense was the catalyst for the energy and for the output, which is something that we have talked about. We talked about the offense kind of being a little bit further than the defense this year, but what we wanted is for our defense, and that's a Duke staple, for our defense to motor our offense, and that's what happened last night. So I'm really happy that that they were able to start off quick. And like you said, Jason, that alley-oop attempt on the very first play of the game, that was at my end of the floor. And I just saw the guy, like it was clear as day. This guy like just came from almost from the flank, try to leap up to grab the ball, but Flip did. And the thing is, from where I saw, Flip didn't see where that guy was. He didn't see that there was a guy behind him. He just saw someone throwing the ball and knew that someone was supposed to be there, and he just made it where it was going to be him. And so just be able to disrupt that. When you have when in football, right? When you come out and you throw a Hail Mary in the first play of the game, you're doing it to shock the other team. But when it turns around and they catch for an interception, it demoralizes your team, because you go, oh man, we can't even catch the nap in the first play of the game. That's what it did. That set the tone for the entire game.
Look, we're on to the defense now, and I want to talk about the defense on a whole, not just that opening few minutes when it was outstanding. We talked about in the preview that this Baylor team is a great offensive team, one of the top offensive teams in the country, probably the best pure shooting team in the country, a Baylor team that averages better than 88 points per game. I'm not sure if you did the math, Donald. They didn't get to 88 last night.
Nope.
They only scored 70. More than 18 points below their per game average. Duke has now held every single team we've faced below their season scoring average. In this game's case, 18 points below their season scoring average. And by the way, it wasn't just that Baylor was cold. They hit 44% of their threes. They're a great 3-point shooting team, but they struggled to get good shots from two. They turned the ball over 14 times. That's big, by the way. Baylor turned the ball over on 21% of their possessions. One out of every 5 Baylor possessions ended in a turnover. And in the post game, Jared McCain was interviewed by Andy Katz. And Andy Katz was saying to him, hey, what's the difference, Jared? What's been going on with this Duke team today versus where they were just a couple weeks ago, everyone was worried. Everyone's like, oh, this Duke team's in trouble. Now everyone's like, oh, yeah, Duke's a top 10 team again. But he said, Jared, what has changed? And Jared immediately without hesitation, he said, our defense is what has changed. He said, we're working harder. We're playing smarter. We're putting pressure on the ball handlers, and we're forcing teams into more contested shots. He said, Coach Shire has been talking to us about how important it is to play defense the Duke way. And it's worth noting that Shire in the postgame, when he was talking about this game, said our perimeter guys, our guards, were disruptive on defense. Baylor never looked comfortable in this game. Yeah, they went on runs, some really nice runs, but usually it was runs that were fueled like off of offensive rebounds, or they would get a guy open for a three. It was not runs where like you're like, oh, they're playing beautiful, seamless offense. I just thought Duke's ability to make Baylor uncomfortable was surprising and super encouraging, because if they keep on doing that, this Duke team's going to win a lot more ball games.
The discomfort in Baylor's offense was never more present than the first half beyond the arc. They were 3 for 9. And like you said, they're normally the best 3-point shooting team in the country. And when people were asking me before the game, like, hey, do we think we have a chance? I go, hey, if we limit the 3-point shooting, we're going to be fine. And that's what happened. I know they went on kind of they were a little bit hotter in the second half, but that first half, they were working hard for every shot that they got. And even the ones that they made, they had a couple where they hit it right in the eye of somebody. And you're just, again, it's one of those plays where if you shoot a three and you hit a three in someone's face, that defender's just got to be like, hey, man, nice shot. And you just chalk that up to, I had great defense, and they made a play. But they were really working hard and working out of their comfort zone on a lot of their possessions, especially in the first half. And I think that was in part due to the fact that they probably expected us to come out flat. They probably expected us to come out with not as much energy as you thought, as we thought they would. But again, this is the Garden. Like this is the game that was circled on the calendar for a reason. There's a reason why we do these games here, or at least in New York City. And I think everyone was ready for the moment. And I think that is the best part of last night, is that throughout the game, even when we went down 6 early in the second half, it didn't feel like we were out of it. Just felt like Baylor was going on a run, and we just had to withstand that run. And then once they were finished, we would go one of our own. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I just got a couple other things in the good I want to get to. One is Duke had a very balanced attack in this game. It felt like, first of all 5 starters were in double figures in this contest. Duke, by the way, is now 21-2 in games where Mark Mitchell scores in double digits, which is kind of amazing. But I just felt like different guys would take turns being our offensive focus. I mean, we saw it from Jared McCain, who led the team in scoring in this game. By the way, it was his 3rd straight game, 3 games in a row now where Jared McCain has had 3 or more 3-pointers. Duke, by the way, is 4-0 this season in games where Jared McCain scores 3 or more 3-pointers. So I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him to get 3+ 3-pointers in every game the rest of the year. But again, it felt like different guys took turns leading the guy on offense. At times it was Filipowski, at times it was Roach. We talked about Ryan Young having a little bit of a flurry, certainly McCain. And then the guy we haven't talked about a lot, Caleb Foster, who to me is looking a lot more confident. Tyrese Proctor is not back yet, but it looks like he's going to be back for Duke's next game against Queens. In fact, they sort of said that if this had been a tournament game, that Tyrese Proctor would have suited up and played. And that Proctor wanted to play, but the Duke coaches, he hadn't been in 5-on-5 drills at practice yet. And so they were like, you know what, let's just wait a little bit longer.
I will note quickly, Jason, that also, he's been without a boot for a couple weeks. Christian Reeves was in a boot last night, a little walking boot.
Yeah, he's still in a boot. Yeah,
he's still in the boot, but Tyrese Proctor was active on the bench. He knew he couldn't play, but he was motivating his team on the sidelines. He was, up and at him. He was jumping up and down when things were going good. But Jason, getting to Caleb Foster, I saw him after the game, walking to my train, and when I tell you, like, how people look taller than in real life than they do on the floor, that's Caleb Foster. He is a full 6'5" when you see him on the streets of New York City. And it's still in his warmups, which was pretty cool with his family. I just kind of gave him a quick hello. But 12 points, 5 rebounds. Like, again, he didn't. There wasn't parts where you said, "Man, Caleb Foster's trying to take over this game," but he was able to provide output when it was needed the most. Mark Mitchell did the same thing on offense. So again, his 13 or 10 points 4 rebounds. He was able to provide stuff when we needed it. Just quickly, we had 2 guys. Flip 13 points, 10 boards, 4 assists. So he was almost at a 10-5-5 game. I believe Jeremy Roach also was close to a 10-5-5 game. So we had guys that were active in every part of the game. And I think that was the thing. While other guys maybe have taken over at stretches, we had some consistent scoring efforts from people. And I think that was the difference as well. You have guys who are able to provide what they do best at the moments that is needed. We don't need 2 or 3 guys to go off for 40 points or 30 points. We just need guys to play their games. And we see like 5 guys in double figures, balanced scoring, everyone taking the load off of each other and making it where Baylor didn't know who to guard, because on any given moment, you guard Flip, Roach takes it to the hole. You guard Roach, Jared McCain hits the 3. You guard McCain, Foster takes it to the hole. That's what we want to see. While we may have our scoring leaders, everyone is able to get their points.
Yeah, and by the way, I got distracted on Tyrese Proctor because I was starting to talk about Caleb Foster, and I'm glad you continued for me. I just think Caleb Foster looks way more confident than he had earlier in the season. I love the way he rebounded. You mentioned his rebounding. I love the way he rebounded with the bigs. He was in there fighting for that ball, and we needed that. I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit when we get to the bad. And like the layup that Caleb Foster made into the body of Yves Missy with just under 10 minutes left. It was a 1-point game. It gave Duke the lead, and he made this layup into the body of Missy. That was a grown man play. You talk about how he looks when you see him, in his sweats out on the streets of New York. He does not play with the strength of a freshman. He plays with the strength of a guy who's beyond his years. And I think the fact that we've been without Tyrese Proctor has really allowed Caleb Foster such a long leash that he's feeling more confident and he's ready to contribute even more than he was before Proctor got hurt. Last thing I want to mention very quickly, efficiency. This Duke team committed only 8 turnovers in this game. Duke, by the way, is now 3rd in the nation, number 3 in all of college basketball in our turnover rate. And that's not on the bad side. That's on the good side. It means our turnover rate is really, really low. We are, by the way, number 1 best team in the country at steal rate. You cannot take the ball away from this Duke team. It is really impressive. We're about 66% more likely to get a steal than give up a steal. I mean, that's pretty cool. This Duke team has turned into a very efficient, very good offensive team. And it is worth noting that Duke is now all the way up to number 8 in Ken Pomeroy's numbers. We've been climbing. We've been climbing a lot lately. This is the highest Duke has been rated all year in Pomeroy's rankings. He had us at number 9 at the very start of the season. And, as much as it looked like Duke was swooning a little bit, look, after that loss to Georgia Tech, we were all the way down to number 20 in the Pomeroy rankings. Didn't take us very long to get back up into the top 10 again, did it, Donald?
Just a couple games and a couple tweaks here and there, and it feels like, and like you said, what a difference a couple weeks makes, right? We were talking 2 weeks ago about this team is what is broken with this team and what needs to be fixed. We even had what has Duke done wrong in the first month of the season, and now we're on a high because and again, I think part of that is this game last night felt all the more important because of what we had already experienced in this season. So for us to go into the Garden, play a really good Baylor team who was in the top 10 until Monday, like to go into the Garden and beat them soundly while playing well, doing it not perfectly, but playing well, that makes everyone feel a lot better about our prospects, especially as we enter the holiday break. And then, with Tyrese Proctor potentially coming back in 10 days, you feel that optimism ever growing in the Duke fan base.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we got to do a little bit of bad, some of the things that we want Duke to work on out of this contest. We also have to do our player of the week because there was only one game. And we have a little Christmas gift to give out to one of our listeners. That's coming up. Stay with us. Donald, we are back from the break. Let's get to the bad from this game. I'm going to start with something. I thought our rebounding was pretty poor when Kyle Filipowski wasn't the guy grabbing rebounds. Like when Flip went for a block shot, Yves Missy was just owning the boards like every time that happened. And I'm gonna, this is mean, but I'm gonna shout out one guy who I think needs to. Mark Mitchell has just 3 rebounds. Mark, I mean, he's got to do more than that on the boards for us. Only 2 defensive rebounds. Jeremy Roach had as many defensive rebounds as Mark Mitchell did. Come on, man. I need more help than that. Ryan Young plays 9 minutes. Mark Mitchell plays 37. Ryan Young had as many defensive rebounds as Mark Mitchell did. We got to give Kyle Filipowski a little bit of help on the boards. I already mentioned Caleb Foster, I thought did a great job with it, but I need Mark Mitchell stepping up there.
I think it leads to the bad that I have is that we made Yves Missy look like the basketball Messi for a good stretch of this game. There was a point, and you mentioned it briefly just a second ago. Every time we would drive the lane and it felt like someone was beaten, right? One of the guards got beaten off the dribble. And because of that, Flip, who's guarding Missy, had to kind of step off to try and block the shot, which, hey, I'm cool with him doing that. Like, sometimes he's going to get it and sometimes he's at least going to alter the shot. But whoever was being beaten off the dribble wasn't flashing to Missy in the post. So what that did, Jason, as you mentioned, is that some guy would shoot it, Flip would try to block it in and would whiff, and it would go off the backboard, and the only person in the paint to grab it was Missy. And Missy had a lot of putback dunks or just even putback lay-ins where he got the rebound. He had 8 offensive rebounds, and I'd say at least 6 of them were this play where some guy would miss the shot and there was no one in the paint to box him out, and he'd get the ball and put it back in for easy buckets. So I think that is something that it's just a matter of, if you're beating off the dribble, that's fine. If Flip is going to come help, that's also fine. But that means that you got to flash to the guy that he's leaving, because you can't leave that person in the paint open for the rebound. I think that's where we missed a lot of those offensive rebounds. And it's not like they did well offensive rebounding. They had 11 offensive. Baylor had 11 offensive rebounds, and Missy had 8 of them. And again, 8 of, like, most of them were this type of play where he was just, Flip had to leave him to take the ball handler and try to stop the shot. And as a result, no one was able to cover for him. So I think that's just a tweaking thing that, video hopefully pulls out, and they're able to learn from that in the next 10 days.
As we continue with the bad, I thought, and this isn't something I'm necessarily going to blame on the Duke team, but Kyle Filipowski was getting manhandled in this game.
Yes.
At one point, with about 17 minutes to go in the second half, Kyle went to set a screen, and Jacoby Walker was guarding him, and you saw Kyle's jersey get tugged, but Jacoby Walker had a fistful of Kyle's jersey, and the refs didn't call anything. And frankly, there were a couple times in the first half when Yves Missy just brutally fouled Kyle's body, just ran into him, and the refs called nothing. And at the 10-minute mark of the second half, Kyle got pushed to the floor, just run over by some dude. Refs
I saw that. Yeah.
Nothing. I don't know what it takes for Kyle Filipowski to get a foul call. This goes back to last year. It goes back to the Virginia game, the Virginia Tech. I mean, Kyle Filipowski's only played, 45 or so games in a Duke uniform. I feel like they're like a dozen of those games where you go, wow, the refs really screwed him in that one. I don't know what. Maybe Duke needs to put together a videotape they send to the ACC officials or something like that. Say, hey, just so you guys are aware, here are all the fouls you're missing on Kyle Filipowski. It's amazing Kyle scores as much as he does, because he gets whacked every time he takes the ball up, and they just call nothing. I think it's that Kyle is a very big, strong guy, and they sort of go, oh, he got hit, but it didn't move him that much. But like I said, at one point he got knocked to the ground in this game, and they weren't calling anything. It bothers me.
Well, it's not even like he's it's not like Shaq, right? Where 5 guys would hold on to him and he'd still dunk the ball and ask for a foul, and the ref would be like, look, you 5 guys on you. I don't know if you know that, but it didn't affect your play. These little things do. And I think part of the frustration with Kyle Filipowski's offensive game this year so far, I think his defense last night was great. I thought he played well on defense. Again, there's a lot of times, and even with the 4 fouls, I thought he played within himself, and I'm not necessarily concerned that he had like maybe one foul that I was like, maybe, probably should have had that back. But I think the frustration with it is last year, Jason, when he was doing all this, we didn't expect him to do all that, right? He was not expected to even start last year, and he becomes this otherworldly player. This year, he is this otherworldly player. He has two good hips, and two hip flip has the expectation of being great. He's an All-American. He's preseason ACC Player of the Year. All these accolades before the season even started. So when he has 10 points or 13 points, you go, man, he really struggled. But that contributes to it. And I see a lot of times where he has to, kind of put on the straight face, knowing that, his, like, for lack of a better word, the attitude, he can't be demonstrative and saying, hey, man, like, these guys are all over me. He has to allow, like, John Shire to yell at the refs and kind of get into him and work that angle where he has to still remain calm. But he can't do that because every single play he's getting hacked, he's getting pulled, he's getting pushed. It's not like where he's just, getting elbows to the face and stuff like that. Like, again, sometimes that happened last year. It's more of he's like, it's the smaller things, right? Like it's the holding and enough to tweak what he has to do. And even if it's for him to kind of, he has to break free, and that break free motion is what the ref sees and he calls an offensive foul. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to goad him into creating an offensive foul out of thin air when they're the ones holding him. And that's got to be super frustrating for him. But it also lends to the fact that he has struggled as a result because he can't do what we expect him to do, because every single play he is getting hacked. So it's a good, it's a bad. It's not something necessary that he could do about it except to kind of play through it like he's trying to do. And I guess the only additive ahead to it is I hope he does, because I think he's the most important player, arguably, that we have on the team. And we need, if this is how they're going to play him this year, then we need for him to learn how to fight through that. He had to do it last year in a different way. This year, I think he has to learn a different way to kind of fight through that.
Yeah. All right. As we move through the bad again, I'm also going to mention the play of our bench. Jalen Blakes, who puts in the effort, plays good defense, but he had almost had a 10 trillion in this game. He had one shot that got packed in a big way. He picked up a foul. He had a turnover. Other than that, 10 minutes does nothing in the box score. TJ Power played 3 minutes, didn't even get up a shot. I feel like that's becoming like a habit for him now. Like for several games in a row now, TJ comes in, plays for a couple minutes, and doesn't do anything. Sean Stewart doesn't even get off the bench. As a result, all our starters play 30-plus minutes. Kyle Filipowski getting in foul trouble was really the only reason we saw very much of Ryan Young. Thank God we did. We sang Ryan Young's praises deservedly, but the Duke bench feels really, really thin at the moment. Now, we're getting Tyrese Proctor back. I think that's going to solve a lot of the bench problems, although that's going to solve problems in the backcourt. I feel like the problems are more venturing toward the front court, at the 4 and the 5. But, we're being honest. The bench play has not been where you need it to be, especially on a team like this that we really thought was going to have a deep bench.
I don't think the return of Tyrese Proctor solves the problem. I think it reallocates it, because now you're going to have 6 guys playing, 30-ish minutes or close to 30 minutes, right? Because when he comes back, one of these guys, of Caleb Foster or Jerry McCain or Mark Mitchell or somebody, is going to have to go to the bench. Last night, Jeremy Roach, I want to find the 15 seconds that he didn't play, because that's all he didn't play.
Yeah, I saw that. I thought it was 39-45, and I was like, when was Roach out of the game?
I think it was a JJ. I think it was one of those JJ substitutions where you sub him right before the media timeout, and he gets that 15 seconds or so, and then they go to the media timeout, and he's back in the game after the media timeout. It was one of those things. But, like, that shouldn't be, right? Jeremy Roach should not have to play 40 minutes. If he's going to play like he did last night, then he play as many minutes as he needs to. But the idea is that you have a bench that that is efficient enough that you can give these guys rest, so that if push comes to shove and we're getting turned crunch time, that they're fresh and we're not relying on a guy who's played almost the entire game to try and win this game for us, but a guy who's got enough rest here and there so that his legs are still fresh and he feels that he can play as well in the first half as he does at the end of the game. So that is where my concern is that when Tyrese Proctor comes back, probably Caleb Foster moves to the bench, and gone are his 30 minutes, right? He's he's got to figure out once again how to get closer to 20 minutes off the bench. But all these guys have to figure out how to do that. And like you said, I think the problem lies in the fact that when our forwards have to sub off, they're not off very long because they got to come back in because of the inefficiency that we've seen so far from the bench and the big men.
Yeah. All right, I'm done with the bad. You got anything else?
No, I think is it player of the week time? I know we did play the game.
Yeah, it is player of the week time. Who are you picking?
You know, Jared McCain is who I'm going with, and please don't use how I say that as a detriment. This was way harder than it should have been. Like, if you looked at the stats, you would say, yes, it's definitely Jared McCain. But we just talked about how so many guys last night had such a great game and influenced the games, the result in different ways. Like Ryan Young could have been that, right? Caleb Foster could have been that. But I'm going to go with Jared McCain because I think Jared McCain from start to finish was the best player of the game and the best player of the week.
Nothing wrong with that choice. Perfectly fine. And you mentioned both Ryan Young and Caleb Foster. Those are absolutely other guys that I could have picked. I went with Jeremy Roach.
That's cool too.
We have sung his praises extensively. I'm not going to get into it too much other than to just mention that plays 39 minutes and 45 seconds. And he was playing like balls to the wall defense every one of those 39 minutes. I was really impressed with his defense, his intensity on defense. And he was shouldering the load on offense. Like Duke's main offensive go-to play for the past few weeks has been Roach and Filipowski running pick and roll. When Kyle got in foul trouble, they went to Roach and Young playing pick and roll, and it was just as effective. And there's a common factor in those two different combos, and that factor is Jeremy Roach, who I thought, we've said it a million times. He is having the senior year that you would dream for any guy. Everyone who rushes to the NBA, you don't get to enjoy the kind of season that Jeremy Roach is having right now.
It's fun to watch him play. This is you talked about last week when I was at your house that some guys had not really improved from last year this year, and that the lone exception was Jeremy Roach. He's improving from game to game too. Like this is the Jeremy Roach that we love to see, and I just hope he continues to be able to do this, because if we get to the promised land that is the national championship Final Four, it's going to be because Jeremy Roach decided that in his senior season that he was not to be denied, and he was if he has to improve every game to do it, then we were going to get it done. So I'm really looking forward to watching him continue to improve over the next few weeks and months.
Okay, Donald, last thing before we go, make this kind of quick. We got an email, and I want to be clear. I'm not asking for everybody to email us about this. I don't want a lot of these, but this one was kind of special. From a gentleman named Van Morris. And he said, do you know what a happy place bracelet is? It is apparently a thin silver or gold bracelet that women wear that has the longitude and latitude of a woman's happy place, the place that makes her happiest. He said, for most people, it's like a vacation house, maybe their childhood home, something like that. His wife, Susie, has a happy place bracelet with the longitude and latitude of Cameron Indoor Stadium. And he said they recently moved back. They retired. They moved back to Durham so they could go to all their Duke games. They live 8.5 minutes from Cameron. And Susie apparently even arranged, I guess she had her daughter, her birth was induced, and she had her daughter, made sure she was born on February 13th, which is Coach K's birthday. Van Morris tells us that the list goes on and on of the ways that Susie is a true diehard Blue Devil fan. And he said he was racking his brain trying to come up with a holiday present for her. And he said she listens to every single episode of the Duke Basketball Roundup. And he goes, I can think of no better present that will make her more excited than a shout out. So Susie Morris, class of 1980, whose happy place bracelet says, take me to Cameron Indoor Stadium. Susie, this is your shout out. Thanks for being a fan of the DBR. Thanks for being a fan of Duke. And I hope you have a Merry Christmas.
Look, you're already living the dream, Susie. You get to do what Jason and I hope to do. I hope to retire in the great state of North Carolina in a little place called Durham, where I can go to Duke basketball games for the rest of my days. This is the dream. You get to retire and go to your happy place every single day. And I know we all share in Cameron being a happy place or the happy place for us. But to follow your dreams, to have a great life and career, and be able to get back to your happy place, it's completely awesome that you and your husband were able to do that. So shout out to you, happy holidays, and thank you for listening. Jason, there's so many people who said, hey, thanks for what you do in the podcast and all this. And I still, as I say, I still kind of get weirded out sometimes when someone goes, hey, you're that guy from the podcast. And I go, who, me? Like little old me? You're listening to two degenerates just talk about Duke basketball. But if that helps you in your quest to go every day to your happy place, then it is our honor to do so.
Amen. All right. With that, we're going to wrap it up here in the latest edition of the DBR podcast. Thank you for listening. We remind you, it's the gift giving time of year, Donald, and this is a good time to go to Home Field Apparel. Get your friends, family, whoever it may be, get yourself a little bit of Duke apparel from Home Field. Type in that code DBR podcast. You'll save, is it 10%, 15%? 15%. 15%. Dude, come on. They got some good stuff there. Check it out. It puts a couple pennies in our pocket, and it saves you a little bit of money. I don't know. I got nothing else to say, man, except happy holidays, everybody.
Go Duke football. We'll see you.
Yes,
we'll see
that's right. This
Saturday.
Weekend, Duke football. Yeah.
Also, real quick, Jason. Tomorrow night. This is. I'm sorry, Friday night. We're recording on Thursday, so Friday night, Friday evening, they're having the Duke football radio show is being recorded at Southern Kitchen and Bar, which is right next to the stadium. I will be there, so if you're in the area and you're coming out to watch Trooper Taylor and David Shoemate do the show, come by, say hi. But also looking forward to seeing a bunch of people in Duke Blue on Saturday at the stadium. Go Duke.
Yeah, we will be back probably after the holidays. Not all the holidays, just Christmas.
Just Christmas.
We got to preview that game against Queens coming up in 10 days. Until then, he's Donald. I'm Jason. This is the Duke Band. Play you out and take you home.